Hi everyone, my name is Rajiv. This is part 2 of microservices deployment series. In this series, I'm going to cover Kubernetes fundamentals, and in the demo section, I shall be talking about core commands using CLI, then microservices deployment using YAML file, how you can generate YAML file, and finally, I shall be covering the service discovery part. So let's get this started. All right. So now let's jump to the Kubernetes. Now this is a typical microservices architecture example. So though in the Docker demo I have just shown you when I was talking about microservices, just 3 or 4 microservices in ecom world, but actually when you start working on the enterprise organization, you will see that you end up with more and more microservices. How would you manage that? I mean, there's a way you can create a Docker image of each, you can go and deploy it, but how would you manage this? The answer is Kubernetes. But once it comes to the scalability part, for example, say there's an order system and you want to ensure that at any point of time a 2 instance of that order system should be up and running, or based on the requirement, right? If load is increasing, that can scale out or scale in. How do you manage, and who will be managing it? Are you going to do it manually? The answer is no. So you need an orchestration layer altogether, which let you manage the complete Docker images or container which you have built and deployed on your behalf, where you can go and define the scalability part and management of the containerized application, right? So in this part, we will be really learning how these are done using Kubernetes. There are other orchestration layer also available, like on the AWS there's a ECS, Elastic Container Service, which is a highly managed service. So why Kubernetes on AWS? I mean, there are different mechanisms, as I mentioned earlier. You can run Kubernetes on your local machine, you can run Kubernetes on data center, you can run Kubernetes on cloud. So let's first understand difference between running Kubernetes on-prem and running Kubernetes on cloud. Though Kubernetes are very powerful and it can let you scale your container independently, but what's about the underlying infrastructure? Who is going to manage and scale them? If you are working on-prem, and for an example, if you have allocated 2 machines there, and because of the scalability you need a third machine, a more resource CPU and more memory power, you need to manually go and add it, because that is not available readily. Someone need to procure it and go and add it in the infrastructure. That's the benefit you are going to get out of cloud. So in the cloud, scalability of infrastructure is seamless. You can go and write auto scalability rules there, where you can say that okay, CPU memory power is CPU and memory is going beyond this one, add one more node there. So that's the benefit. And why cloud? Why AWS, right? Because AWS is highly scalable infrastructure provider, and it makes very easy to run Kubernetes, right? You have 2 approaches there to go ahead with Kubernetes on AWS. One is that you want to buy just infrastructure, so that is scalable in nature, but you need to do everything at your own. You need to build your nodes your own, you need to deploy whole Kubernetes stuff your own, and you need to build a cluster and manage everything at your own. So that's where the first approach is. I've seen a couple of customers using this approach, but it's very complex to manage the Kubernetes at your own. Second thing is that you let the core piece of your Kubernetes managed by AWS, which is known as EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service. This is exactly the same Kubernetes. The only difference is that in a cluster where the master node is required to manage your Kubernetes cluster is managed by AWS. You need not to focus, you need not to go and create your cluster at your own. AWS on your behalf will manage your cluster, and you will only managing your data plane, where you will be you need to go and deploy your container. So this is the architecture of the Kubernetes. So if you see, the left hand side part is nothing a control plane, whereas the right hand side part is your data plane, and bottom part is nothing, simply a image store hub.docker.com, right? So master node is required to run Kubernetes and ensure that the whatever you are deploying on a worker node is up and running as per the requirement. So you need not do something with the master node. You will only use the kubectl command, which is a CLI of Kubernetes, to connect to the API and execute your command. So just in basic understanding of this components which are part of the master node is control manager, which is used to manage the overall control infrastructure, scheduler, which is used to add one more node or maybe it's in node management, and etcd is something where state is managed for the Kubernetes, and the worker node is nothing, simply your data plane where you go and create your container and run it, right? What is managed by AWS when you go with the EKS? If you're going with your own deployment, everything need to be managed by yourself. But if you're going with the EKS, this control plane is managed by AWS. You will be only focusing on your worker node. We'll see that example, because the example which I have taken, I have deployed my cluster on EKS only. I'll show you how easy it is to go and create a cluster on AWS using EKS. So this is a simple diagram, talking about the same thing. If you go with the EKS, Amazon will manage your master node and state store, wherein you will be responsible for managing worker nodes and your container. So when we are saying that you will be responsible for managing your worker node, doesn't mean that you will need to create it manually. There are auto scaling available. You need to just define the policy, and as per the policy, it will be adding or removing the nodes as per the CPU and memory requirement. So with this, let's jump to the demo. So for this demo purpose of Kubernetes, I have created some sample application. So I have created 4 services. One is known as the order service, inventory service, dispatch service, and payment service. The order service need to be exposed publicly, because that is the one which will be consumed by any application, and these other 3 services are consumed by order service sequentially, right? It's not exactly sequentially, but the idea is that the order service will be calling these inventory service, dispatch service, and payment service one by one or at the very same time, depending on the requirement. These are not something any detailed functionality has been written in these services. What these services are doing is simply returning a text using which you will be able to understand how order service is calling in the services and getting the response back. To keep the this example simple, I have not used any database as such, but you can go ahead and create a database altogether as per your requirement and business functionality. All these applications or microservices are written using Node.js, so I'll walk you through the code as well. So let's jump to the CLI part and then understand how CLI is deployed. All right, so let's start with Kubernetes demo. So first of all, you need to deploy a CLI. How many CLIs are required? Since we are talking about AWS EKS, so first CLI you need is to be AWS CLI to be deployed. The AWS CLI details available here. Let me give you the URL. So if you're going to deploy it, my recommendation is to go with AWS CLI version 2. Click here, and there's a official documentation available if you want to deploy on Linux, Mac, or Windows machine. So for example, say if I'm using a Linux, I'll click here and then probably I'll follow the steps to get this deployment done, right? So which flavor of Linux you are using, it's a 2-step process. Just go and do it and your deployment will be done. So once deployment is done, you just need to complete test it using with AWS version, and you can see here the version is 2.0. Apart from AWS, you also need to deploy EKS CTL, which is a CLI specifically for connecting to your EKS cluster. And when you will be deploying EKS CLI, the kubectl will also be deployed. Kubectl is the CLI for interacting with your Kubernetes commands, right? So again, same thing, just follow which version of operating system you are using. So it will ask you to install the AWS CLI if you are not already done. Then go and deploy, EKS CTL, and then it will ask you to deploy the kubectl, right? Once this is done, you can test it. Is there 0.22 is the latest one, and then kubectl. Yep, the client wasn't there. You can also use the command short hyphen short. Yep, so it's a version, server version is a 1.16.8 and same the client version. All right, so once this is done, what exactly you need to do first? Since we are going to interact with the AWS EKS, you need to configure your AWS. So you should be having a IAM where proper access is given, need to be configured with AWS CLI first. So to configure AWS CLI, you need to just give a command AWS configure. It will ask you for the access key ID, which I have already configured, access key, and which region you want to go and want to interact with. AP South 1 is for Mumbai region, and output format you can leave it blank. It will use the JSON format. So this access key and secret key we will be creating using AWS IAM policy that need to have a proper access on all the resources which you are going to work with. I have given the root access so that I can use all the commands, possible commands, but in a production environment you should be using the required permission only. All right, I'm not going to talk about these details related to AWS. As I mentioned, I shall be creating a separate demo for that as a separate session, but just to understand at this moment, you should be having access to your AWS environment, and that access key and ID need to be configured here before moving to the kubectl. So what you will do next? You need to create a cluster first. So create a cluster, the command is very simple. To create a cluster, you will be interacting with a different command altogether, right? So basically we are talking about 3 CLIs: AWS CLI, kubectl, and the EKS ctl. So AWS CLI is is used to interact with any other command with AWS. EKS CTL is used to connect with your cluster itself, and whatever the nodes, worker node you want to connect with, because most of the command you need to fire with the worker node and your deployment related stuff, you will be using kubectl command, which is a Kubernetes command, Kubernetes CLI, right? Now I need to create a cluster, so I shall be using the EKS CTL, which is which can be used to create a cluster here. I'm not going to create a cluster. I can give you and let you know the command how this can be used, and you can make the changes as per your requirement, because cluster creation is actually almost a 15 to 20 minutes exercise. I've already created a cluster, but I can show you the command here. So this is the command, right? You will give a command EKS create cluster. You need to give your cluster name, whatever the name you want to choose. You need to give a region. Even if you're not giving the region which you have selected from with AWS CLI, it will use the same region. Then you need to give a name to a node group. Node group is nothing, simply your worker node grouping, how many worker node you are going to create. You can give a logical grouping name there, and how many nodes you want to create here too. What is the type of node? That is a machine type you want to create. What is the minimum node and what is the maximum node? That limit can be set. This value, these two values are required if you want to go with auto scalability. And if you want to manage service or not, by default it should be always a managed, so that AWS can manage even auto scalability if you want to on your behalf. This command says that I'll talk about this command later on when I'll talk about the cluster scalability, but whenever you are creating the cluster first time, make sure that you always include this command ASG access, right? Once you will give it this command, it will take 15 to 20 minutes to get the cluster created, right? So this is the first command. Now if you want to list your cluster, so I have connected to AWS in Mumbai region. Now if I need to understand how many clusters are created, so cluster related command will be given using the EKS CLI only, EKS CTL only. So the cluster related command, if you want to see the cluster, how many clusters are created in Mumbai region, I'll fire this command, EKS CTL get cluster. You can see there's one cluster created. The name of cluster is AWS test cluster and the region is AP South 1. Alright, so we'll be using this cluster throughout our demo purpose. You can fire some other commands related to cluster like node group, how many nodes are created, right? So the command for this, that is EKS CTL get node group, and then you can give the cluster name. Test. So these are the nodes created inside this cluster. You can see the name, the min is 1, max is 5, desired capacity is 1, and the type is this one. If I need to expand here, you'll be able to see properly. T3A medium. Alright, if you notice, I have just given the EKS CTL command. The reason is that I'm interacting with the cluster, but if I need to interact with my worker node, I shall be giving the kubectl command. Now we are working at 2 layers at this moment. The cluster is managed by AWS, wherein there is already a separate CLI using which you can interact with the cluster and the nodes, worker nodes. So how your kubectl or your Kubernetes will understand what cluster you are working at this moment. To do this at the local environment, whenever you create or install your kubectl, a config file is created, and inside the config file, all the cluster which you will create, the config entry will be inserted there. To understand those things, you need to fire a command kubectl config get contexts. You see, there are 2 cluster created. One is this one. If you see the last name, this is a complete CRN path, that is AWS test cluster, and second is a Minikube. Minikube I have created in the local environment, right? I'll talk, if I'll get some time, I'll talk about the Minikube as well, but I have created on my local machine, though this is not going to work perfectly okay because my machine size is small and I shall be interacting here. So what cluster is set at this moment by default cluster, you will see a star asterisk there. If you want to change the cluster, you need to give a command kubectl config use context space and the name of your cluster. So in this case, I shall be giving this name if it is not there. Since this is by default set as an alarm, my cluster, I don't need to give it. What if you already have a cluster created, for example, say in EKS, and then after that you have deployed a kubectl command? So there will be no entry inside this config, right? This is get context will come as a null and you will not be able to connect unless you made an entry. So there's a command available, just Google it out, how to insert a context entry in the kubectl for the EKS clusters. There's a command available, that's available in the Google. You need to fire that command and it will automatically get inserted here. But you need to ensure that current context is always the cluster which you want to work with. Now you want to check how many nodes are running. Simple command is kubectl get node. I'm not mentioning any cluster name because my cluster is by default set to my EKS cluster. It will give me the number of nodes. So you see, these are the number of nodes available with a complete proper name, 1, 2, 3, and these are the version of EKS deployed there, right? And these all are in ready state. If you want to fire, you want more details here, you need to fire the same command kubectl get node -o void. It will give you more details on these nodes. So now you see it is also giving you the internal IP and external IPs of those Just to help you understand, all these 3 nodes which are deployed on AWS, I have deployed them on public subnet. So the public IP is available so that I can call it, but in the production environment it's recommended to deploy in a private subnet to ensure that they are safe and nobody can access nodes directly. I've done it purposely so that I can get those nodes called directly through your URL through APIs, so that I can explain you a couple of the commands. All right, so we learned a couple of commands. One is how to list cluster, how we can list the node group using the AKS-ctl command, then how we can set the context, kubectl config get context, how we can get the list of the context, how we can set the context using kubectl config use context, and how we can get the node kubectl get nodes. Kubectl get nodes we'll use throughout the demo purpose most of the time to understand the overall behavior of the node. All right, now the application which I was talking about, all the examples, even including those applications code and the examples which I'm going to use in this demo session, is already available in my GitHub repository. Here, the container deep dive, right? You just need to go and clone it. All the commands will be available. I have already cloned it here. If I fire tree command, you'll be able to see. I've already cloned here. So all these commands which I shall be and demo commands which I'll be firing, example which I'll be giving, is available here so that you can rerun all the commands if you want to, right? So let's jump to the our first demo. I need to go to the container deep dive folder, Docker demo is done. Let's jump to the EKS folder. All right, so in first go I shall be walking you through firing the command or executing the command directly with the CLI, but that's not the right approach. I mean, I shall be deploying a couple of the sample application using CLI command. When I'm saying CLI command, the command which I will be directly writing here, but though you will be able to achieve most of the command using CLI directly, that's not the right approach, as I mentioned, right? The right approach is the YAML based file where you create the YAML deployment YAML, complete YAML, how you want to deploy it, and then execute the that YAML file and get the everything created. So let's first understand your CLI commands. Okay, if you want to deploy something, a simple image taken from your Docker Hub, how would you file that? How would you execute that command? So basically the idea is that you want to deploy your image to a container via kubectl, that is a Kubernetes. Let me just walk you through quickly the application which is available in my Docker Hub. Again, those are also publicly available. So there are multiple repositories, right? But for the sake of this demo, as I mentioned, I have created 4 microservices. One is order, payment, dispatch, and inventory. So I'll be using couple of whatever the commands I shall be using or walking you through in the demo purpose. I shall be using either of one application, this microservice, or all microservices depending on the requirement, right? So in this case, I'm going to use the run command, kubectl run, the name of my application, then -- image. What is the public repository name for my image? This is a public repository. If this is a private, the access is not possible because I'm not logged in. And what port I have exposed this my application to. So the port is 8801. I'll show you the code in some time so that you can understand, or if you can remember during the Docker example I was showing how port is exposed. So for this inventory I have used this port. I'm not mentioning any version here, right? If I'm not mentioning any version here, the latest version of my Docker Hub will be used. So there's a possibility that in a Docker Hub I may have deployed, using Docker push command multiple version, as we have seen in the demo. So I can either mention the version number directly, whatever the version I want to get this deployed. I'm not mentioning anything, so it will take the latest. So basically it is going to take this image from Docker, create a container and deploy that in the container itself, and all management of that service will be done by kubectl, that is a Kubernetes, and you can access that on a port 80, right? Before that, let me show you one more command before that. So if you want to see what is actually deployed here, command is get kubectl get all. I'll talk about different components, how you can access it, but if you give a command kubectl get all on the worker node which are running behind the scene, if anything is deployed, you will be able to see. So nothing is there. There's only a single service is coming, that is a service Kubernetes cluster IP. This is a service using which you are interacting. So whatever the command we are going to give, like kubectl get all, this service is listening that command, that is the API on the master node which I was talking about, and then executing to the cluster. So you have not done any deployment. If you have done any deployment, you will be able to see those listing here. So let's fire that command. All right, this is done. Let me again fire kubectl get all. Now see, there is one pod deployed, no service. There is one deployment deployed and one replica set. What is pod? So whatever you deploy, whatever the container you deploy on Kubernetes, smallest component which is created in Kubernetes is known as a pod. Roughly you can understand that a pod contains the container. So one pod is related to one container, but as we move along, we'll see that in a single pod, you can also deploy multiple containers, but only one container can be exposed to outside world. So the idea is that if there are multiple containers, one or two containers, or the two business logic which are dependent on each other, and one is talking to each other, second container, those two containers can be deployed in a single pod. But in most of the cases, you will be deploying one container in one pod. But there are scenarios, you will see that there are some dependent container which are dependent on a first container. They can be deployed as as a dependency container in the single pod itself. For example, say let's you have 4 microservices running, right? And you want to write some logic which can take a log from those container and write to some central place. So those log related container can be deployed along with the main container, though that log related container will not be exposed to outside world, because in a single pod only one container can expose to outside world using pod. Okay, so whenever you will deploy using run command, it will always deploy 3 things. One is your container in a pod, it will give a unique name to it. Then one deployment unit. So deployment controls the both. So basically it will, whenever you will create a run command, it will create a deployment unit. We'll see more about deployment. And then deployment will deploy 2 things, replica set and inventory. Replica set ensures that how many copies of this image is going to run, or how many copies of this service is going to run. So you see by default, if you're not giving, it is giving a desired and current as a 1. This ready says that is it a ready state or not. Since we immediately fired the command, it was not ready at that moment. Let me fire it again. Now it's running one by one, it's running. So this is a status, and this is a desired, and this is a current, and this is a ready state. All right, the question is that how you are going to access it. To access this, you need to expose this pod, basically the deployment, as a service. So service is nothing, that API, and then you need to decide that how this API can be exposed externally. There are multiple mechanisms available there. We'll talk more in service discovery section. I'm going to use one of the mechanism so that I can show you access. The other way is that if you want to test it locally, you can log into inside your pod itself using the bash command, exec bash command. So it will give you the shell of your Linux container itself, inside which you can use the local host to access it. Let me show you how. So I need my pod name, though this is just for the testing purpose. I mean, this is not the way your application will be consuming these services. So I need my pod name, and I shall fire my command kubectl. So this is the command kubectl exe it, the pod name and the bash shell. If you press enter, you will see that you will inside the bash of this container, and here you can use the curl command to access it. Localhost, we know that we have exposed service on 8081. People who are not coming from Linux background, curl is command which is used to access your website, or HTML or HTTP related call. So you see that the response is there, inventory. I have just pushed this text from this service, so this proves that the service is executed. Okay, now let's get this out of this pod. Now how I will go and expose this pod as a service. So basically pod is not exposed as a service, your deployment is exposed as a service. We know that whenever we deploy pod, these deployments in unit and replica set is also deployed all together. So I need a service for accessing this. What is the name of deployment? Is inventory, right? So I'll be using this command kubectl expose deployment unit name deployment inventory. I'll talk about this, what exactly this mean. The name of service is inventory, and the port where it is exposed is 8081. Now this is important, right? I'll talk more in the discovery section as I mentioned. Just for your understanding purpose, since I need to show you how access is done, why your pod or your service is accessed via service mechanism. I'm using this type is node port. What node port does is it exposes service via IP, public IP of your worker node. So you can use any worker node public IP to access your service. Let me just execute this and again call. Now see, there's a service. Now how I'll call this service? As I mentioned, you will be using the public IP of your particular node, any node out of 2, 3, whatever the worker node are running, but you will not be using the port 8081, right? What exactly node port does is that Kubernetes mapped this particular new port. It assigned a new port from your machine and map it with 8081 internally. So I shall be using 326 rather than 8081. Let me find the public IP of my worker node. So pick anyone. Let me pick this one. And the IP is 32326. Yep, the response is here. I was testing earlier, so that's why you were seeing the response earlier as well. I can use 32326 just for confirmation. 32326. Yep. So you can use any public IP of your out of 3 nodes, and it will be accessible on a particular port which is mapped with your service port. All right, so there are 2 mechanisms we learn. Using run command you can create your pod, deployment unit and replica set, and using the expose command you can expose your service via particular type of port depending on what exactly you're using. We have tested it using the node port. We'll learn a couple of more mechanism as we go along and during the discovery session. All right, but is this the mechanism we should be using for deployment of service? Obviously no, right? Because you cannot go and execute the run command and to run the service and then expose and fire the CLI command to do it. You need some automation, right? To do the automation you need a file. The file using which we can do the deployment in Kubernetes, we create a YAML file for that. We'll see that how many different kind of YAML file we can create it, and that may look complex to you, but these YAML file can be generated using these command, right? Basically a template can be generated. So let me show you how. So we have deployed 2 services over here. Let me clear the screen. So the first mechanism to generate YAML file is that you can use the deployment, and then you can use the get command to get the deployment details and then save it to a particular YAML file. Let me show you how. So here what I'm doing, that I'm using the kubectl get deployment, and my deployment name is inventory. Then I'm saying that -o, I need a YAML file, and then I'm exporting this to the deployment.yaml. Right? So this is how I can generate the file, YAML file. Let me just show you, So it has generated the YAML file. Let me just list it out to you. There's a deployment YAML. Right? Let me open this. Deployment YAML for you. I'm using a Visual Studio Code, guys, so just don't get confused. So code is the command for CLI for opening this. Yeah. So this is the command generated. So this is the file you will be using. So when I'll be talking about the YAML, just don't get confused that okay, it is very complex. You can easily generate it, and there are a couple of parameters you need to change and get the deployment done, right? So the first mechanism I have shown you is get the deployment file generated from your deployment itself. But this is not the right way. You will not go and deploy it and then generate the deployment file. Rather, you will be using a direct command, a try run command, using which you can deploy generate the YAML file directly before any deployment. So before that, let me just delete these deployment and service first. This is a command to delete the deployment. And this is the command to delete the service. So you need to give the service name, inventory service, and then deployment service. All right, let's double check if everything is deleted. Yeah, everything is deleted. You see pod is getting terminated. It will come fire command again. You'll see that this is deleted. Yeah, everything is cleaned up. Before that, let me go inside my folder. All right. Now what if I have done no deployment? Can I use any command to generate my YAML? Yes, the same command. So if you can remember, this is the command I have used to deploy my inventory pod first, where my pod was deployed, deployment unit was deployed itself, and the replica set was deployed. So kubectl run inventory image name. Now the only new thing I'm doing is that I'm using the -o YAML, and I'm using a try run. So try run suggests that just execute the command, generate the YAML file, but don't run the command. Actually, don't execute the command at Kubernetes cluster level, right? And then I'm using the deployment.yaml file, so whatever the outcome is there, if I'll not use it, it will just print everything in the screen. I'm using it so that my file can be created. Let's see how. Now I'm using code deployment file. Now see, a clean version of the same thing has been generated. We just need to make changes. It says that this is a deployment type, this is the API version, and couple of the name, replica set, inventory, and the name of your container. We'll talk about all these details as we go along, right? Now if you want to generate the service exactly the same way, you can do that. If you can remember, I was using kubectl expose command. Same command I'm using, and same OYAML try run, and then deployment YAML, right? To run this command, you need to have a deployment already available. Since I have deleted everything, that's why expose will not work. But this is the way you can go and get this created, right? So it's pretty simple. If your deployment is done, you need to write a YAML file. You need a YAML file for your service. You can go and fire this command. Since there's no deployment available, that's why this file is this command itself is giving an exception. that inventory is not found. So you can test it. It's pretty simple and straightforward. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason you can go and do these things. There's a lot of these templates are available using which you can go and do the deployment. Yeah. So now onward, whatever the deployment we are going to do using on Kubernetes, we shall be using the YAML file itself, and I'm not going to generate it again and again. I have already a template available which I'll be changing, right? So let's jump to the second part. All right, so now we will test the all the service and pod deployment using deployment YAML. So let's first understand how this deployment YAML look like. I've already created it, so I'm just going to open it and going to explain you the sections. I'm opening in the Visual Studio Code. Now see, in a single file I have already created a deployment type and also the service type. Why this is required? Because I need, if I'm going and doing the deployment of my pod, I need a service using which I can access it. So either you can go and create two different files and go and one by one deployment, or you can go and create it one. It's up to you, right? It totally depends, and both approaches are fine. I usually prefer to create single file. In sometime I used to create multiple files depending on which mechanism I'm using. Moving forward, we'll learn about Helm packaging. Then probably we can go and create a separate file every time whatever the deployment is required. Okay, so let's first talk about the deployment. So this is the YAML which we generated earlier, so you have already seen it. So in the deployment we need to manage and mention the API version. You can find from the template itself. Then metadata is important, because in the metadata section we need to mention the name of your deployment unit. This is a deployment unit name, and this is the label. I'll talk about label in some time, why this is important. But label is way Kubernetes can identify your resources, right? So this is important. Usually we prefer to give a simple name, whatever the name is given, we usually prefer the same name for the label itself. So you can use any key and any value there. So I'm here using app, and my name is inventory. In the spec section we give the replica set. You have seen that there was a deployment, there was a replica set, and there was a pod. So how many instances of this pod you want to run? So for example, say I want to run 2, so I'll change the number to 2. So basically there will be 2 pod deployed exposed via single service. That is a load balance, right? Then the selector, then match level. We'll talk about the selector and the match level in some time, right? You need to just follow the simple mechanism and give the name here. The last section is the container, where you need to mention the container name. So you can give any name here, but this is important, right? Rajiv Jaiswal inventory latest. So this is the container which I have deployed in my Docker Hub. I have already published that image there, and this is the port I want to expose it to. Just to help you understand again, right, let me just quickly go you to the Docker Hub, and so that you can recall that. Yep. So just to help you recall again, I have already deployed inventory service on port 8081. This is port 8082 dispatch service, payment port 8083, and order is a port 8080, right? So I'm using this inventory service to call. Since these are publicly published APIs, publicly published images, they can be directly consumed. I'm not mentioning any tag here. So there are multiple tags available, v1, v2. If I'm not mentioning anyone, it will pick the pull the latest one, right? So this is what I'm using throughout my example. And when I'll be going the deploying complete application, I should be deploying all images on different ports, right? Now this is my deployment, and this is my service. Again the same mechanism, same pattern, metadata, name, label. Now this type is very important. If I'm not going to mention anything, right? If you remember, we have tested with the type node port, and I've explained what node port is. If I'm not mentioning anything, it means type is a cluster IP. Cluster IP is an internal IP, which you cannot directly consume. So in that case, you need to log into inside a container and then access it. And this is the port I'm going to access, and this is a selector, right? Let's go and deploy it. Command is very simple. kubectl apply -f and name of your deployment file. That's it. So if you want to go ahead and deploy and control the whole deployment, create a single file, use the kubectl apply -f deployment file name, enter, everything will be deployed in one go. And if you want to delete everything in one go without making any changes in the file, just file a command, execute the command kubectl delete -f and the name of your file. We'll see in some time. Deployment is done. Let me file, execute kubectl get all. Now see, everything is deployed. Now here you are seeing the dip inventory. There's two pod running. If you can remember the replica set, we mentioned 2 desired value, and that's why you are seeing 2, and both are load balanced through a service, inventory service on this cluster IP. You can log into this cluster IP. You can use, you cannot, use the cluster IP directly, from outside world, because this is a private IP for cluster itself. It's not even the private IP of node, this is the private IP of your cluster. So if you want to test it locally, you can go and use the execc command to go inside a particular container and use the localhost command. That's the way, right? If I need to delete it in one go, I'll just use same apply. You just need to ensure you have not made any changes in your deployment file. Just you delete command and all deleted. All gone. It's terminating. Pods are getting terminated. Again fire. Okay, there's a command known as watch. It will keep watching the, so every 2 seconds it will refresh the command. Yep, so one is gone. This will also go sometime. It's gone, right? Now let's jump to the label part I was talking about. Again, there's a deployment file. Let me open it. So if you see, this is exactly, looks like, the one which we executed earlier. This is a service, there's a deployment, and again there's a type. Since we need to access it, let me just change the type to, some input, so that we can access this publicly, right? Now what is the difference, right? Let's try to understand this. So if you see, I have created 2 deployment. There's a one service which is talking about metadata name is level is inventory, and there's a selector name as app. What this mean? The selector section says that in a service that all the pods label is inventory, they will be load balanced for this service. So whenever this service will be called, all the pods whose label is inventory will be called one by one, depending on which one is free. That load balancer, right? It will call first one, then second one, then third one, depending on the number, and then again repeat the same pattern, right? So it balances the load across multiple pod itself. Same thing here will happen, right? Now there's a possibility that you can create a different kind of pod but use the same label itself. In that case, you will see a different result with your service whenever you're calling. If, for example, say there's a pod A you are going to deploy, and pod B you're going to deploy, and pod A and pod B are different pod, returning a different message altogether, doing the different functionality altogether, but they have the same label. So just to understand what exactly I have done it, if you see that label which I have used, these are the 2 labels. label of replica set app is equal to inventory and app is equal to inventory. Label should match, right, internally in the deployment. If you're deploying the pod separately, there will be a single label, but just for the sake of understanding, make sure that these are. So if these are same, give as of the service, this pod belongs to this service. This will be associated with this service. Now what exactly I'm going to deploy? I'm deploying same inventory latest here. Now see here again, I've done the same thing. Inventory, right? These two are same. I've just changed the label name, which is a name actually. This is not the match label. So basically these are the labels which need to be matched. And here I'm deploying, Rajiv Jaiswal new inventory. This is also a new service. If you go back here, I've created, taken a copy from inventory and created a new inventory service and exposing on the same port 8081, right? So basically for service, these are two pod associated with that service, and it will call one by one depending on some different patterns used inside the service itself, right? So we will be seeing a different message altogether one by one, maybe 4 or 5 times from one service and then 1 or 2 times from the different service, depending how load is getting distributed. I have done this just for the sake of understanding, so that you can understand how label is used to map your service to the pod, right? Let's go and deploy it. All right, let me double check if something is running. Nothing. Same command. Apply. Same. Okay, so now it's created. All right, so both pods are running. You see that it's a different inventory. This is a new inventory and there's a single service. So if I'll use the service, this is exposed via, okay, I forgot saving the node port name. Okay, let me just delete it and deploy it again. This is not saved actually. Now let's deploy it again. All right, just don't get confused. There are 4. 2 are getting terminated and 2 are running. That is one inventory and one new inventory. These are getting terminated. So now service is having a node port exposed on 31044. So if you'll access it using machine IP is going to be same 31044. See, the message is coming from the inventory. Yeah. So now if you see, if I'm using a different IP, this doesn't mean that it is dependent on the IP actually. Because of the load, it is using a particular pod, as a target. So here it is giving me, if there's a load, probably a single call may change whenever you will keep calling it again and again, right? All right, so this is the label, guys, right? So if we'll change this label, so your service label, match label should be matching with your service selector label should be matching with your match label, whatever you have given in the pod itself, right? Let's delete it. Everything is gone in a single go. All right. So now we are going to learn what is a service discovery. Service discovery is a mechanism using which you will discover your service, right? So what are those mechanisms are? So whenever you go and deploy a Kubernetes cluster, it comes, there's a boundary of this Kubernetes, cluster itself where there's a networking model created. So whatever you deploy without mentioning any port or any type of the service, it is by default deployed as in a cluster IP. So cluster IP is nothing, simply a private IP belongs to that Kubernetes cluster itself. So even that is not accessible from your machine where the cluster is actually deployed. To access it, you need to be part of those, cluster itself. So when this cluster IP is used, for example, say there are 4 services deployed in your Kubernetes. For example, say if I take our example, we are talking about deployment of order, which we are going to expose publicly, and then inventory service, dispatch service, and payment service. So my order service is internally going to consume all these services. In that case, since my order service is also part of that cluster itself, that can consume these services using this cluster IP. But is that a right mechanism? Ideally not, because you cannot depend on the IP itself, right? The life of your pod is not certain. There's a possibility that because of some reason a pod may go and get killed, a new pod will come up, because Kubernetes will take care of the scalability part, right? So a pod may get killed, again get created, and IP will get changed. So what are the mechanism available? That is known as a service discovery, right? So Kubernetes by default deploy a DNS. So using the service name itself, you can call your service. I'll show you how, right? But that is the internal mechanism. Through service discovery, rather than using the cluster IP itself, the cluster IP is also going to work, but that may change, if service get killed and created new one, but your service name is not going to change, and that is very important. So you can use your service name to call your internal services from each other. Now what are the other mechanism? You can also expose service as a node port, as we mentioned that, we have seen that node port is nothing, simply a mapping of your cluster IP with a machine IP, and the IP will, port will also change there. So using the machine public IP, you can directly call and consume the, your service directly. The third mechanism is known as load balancer. So there are different kind of load balancer depending on your environment which you are using. A load balancer, mechanism will be used. Since we are using EKS, so in our case, the load balancer which is built of, that is known as a ELB, elastic load balancer, will be consumed to go and get your service consumed. So this is the mechanism where you want to expose something publicly, which can be using a load balancer, this service can be called. We'll see how, right? So let me just open the deployment file first. Now see, this is exactly the same file. I'm going to use the same dep inventory, one deployment unit, same container, and I'm going to use different kind of type to call the service. If I don't use anything, it will be exposed as a cluster IP, right? Let me show you how, and how you can use the service discovery to call it internally. So let's first deploy it. So I'll be using the same command. Apply, and deployment is done. Now let's list it out. So it's running, right? And I have a service created. So as I mentioned that you can, if you are part of this cluster itself, you can go and use the cluster IP even to call it. That's not an issue, but this is not the right approach. Since we are not exposing it publicly, using node port or load balancer, you cannot directly call it from outside. But you can also use the service discovery, which is the name of the service, to call it. So if we go and log into this pod, and let's do it. We will log into this pod. So we'll become a part of cluster itself, and then we'll use a service discovery service name to call it. If you can remember what command we used, that is the kubectl exec. -it, pod name, and the bash. So I'm part of it. I'm inside my container. Now I can use my curl command, and I'm using the service name that is the inventory svc. And port is 8081. See, I got the result. And this is the mechanism, right? So for example, say if you're defining your application and your service which is publicly exposed, that's fine. You can directly go and consume it through a load balancer port, right? If you have exposed that through a load balancer. But how would you integrate the call for or URL for your internal service call? Simple thing is that in the deployment file, you know that what name you're going to give there, and you can use the same name. I'll show you exactly the same way I have done this integration in my application in some time. All right, so first we'll talk cover this node port and load balancer, and then I'll show you the code of my application. Okay, now let me delete it. Let's go and change it. Node port, we have already seen it, so I'm going to use the load balancer to show you. So node port in last sections we have already seen it. Let me save it and deploy it again. Done. Since we are creating a load balancer, it will take some time because getting the load balancer created on AWS level takes some time, though IP is already available. If you see that this is my service, type is load balancer, and I got external DNS name for that. And if you see that this is a elb.amazonaws.com, and the port, it is going to be exposed exactly the same port, the one which we have provided, 8081. Don't get confused with this port. I'll explain you why this is there. So let me call it on port number 8081. It will take some time, as I mentioned. So let me pause and then come back once this ALB is created. All right, it took around 1 minute to get this created. Now this is back, right? So if I'm accessing it publicly, if you want to access it from anywhere else, you can go and access it, and this will work. All right, fine. So what we learned we learned three mechanisms: cluster IP, node port, and the load balancer, and the service discovery using DNS name, how we can access the internal service. Now let me walk you through the code of my application, where how exactly I have used the service engineers to do the integration for my application. Let me go to the folder. Let's first delete it. kubectl delete. So it will take some time. Here it will be deleted, and then at AWS end, the LP which has got created will also be deleted. All right. So let me show you the Node.js deployment YAML. No, not this one. This is a deployment thing. I want to walk you through my application. Yeah, API. So see, I've created a separate folder for each of my API. The two you have already seen, inventory and new inventory. There's an order which I'm going to expose publicly when I will be deploying my application in payment and dispatch. So these services are getting deployed and they are not calling each other, but the order service is actually internally consuming my inventory service, payment service, and dispatch service. So I'm going to show you the code of order so that you can understand, how integration, service integration has been done. Let me go inside this folder and I'll open index.js. This is a very simple, node.js command. If you see that, so what exactly I have done, right? I'm doing nothing. I'm simply calling these services one by one and printing the outcome from those services. So order is received, processing started, outcome from inventory service, outcome from payment service, and then outcome from my dispatch service. Right? Pretty simple. And I'm the order service I'm exposing on port number 8080. All right. So I've given it localhost here, but actually this is OR command. So if there's no value available in this variable, so this variable need to be passed from the deployment YAML itself. So in the deployment YAML, you will be actually defining the URL for the service, that is a service discovery name, that is a service name, colon, whatever the port you are going to expose that. If that is not available, then probably this value will be used and the operating system will fail because there's nothing has been deployed locally. This is required for compiling purpose, since you will be testing it locally. That's why this is required. So let me jump to the that deployment file itself and then show you. Yeah, so I'm in my deployment folder of application. Let me just open the code. So as I mentioned earlier, I usually prefer to create a single file. So here also, for all services, I've created a single file and deployment. So you'll see multiple, entry here, starting from here to, yeah. So I'll go one by one. So this is the service for my order. Nothing specific. Name is this one. Type is node port. I've given because load balancer used to take some time. That's why I'm using the node port. But you can go and create a type of load balancer as well. Then here is the inventory service. Name is the inventory SVC, and you see I have not mentioned anything. That's why this is going to be my cluster IP. Payment service same 8082, and dispatch service. Now in the deployment part of my order service, if you see, I'm passing couple of environment variable. If you remember, these variables were defined there as in a process ID, right? So in the name of the inventory, I'm passing this inventory SVC because I know that what name I'm giving here, and the port number. So this is what I wanted to tell you, right? This is a service discovery service DNS internal name using which you can call your services, right? So let's go and deploy it and then see how this is going to work end to end. Rest of the things we have already seen. The only thing is that there are multiple deployment units and multiple services created for each of the service. All right, let's go and deploy it in one go. Before that, let's check if nothing is running. kubectl get all. Yeah, nothing is running. Same command. Apply -f. Name is different, so I shall be using node deployment. And done. It's as simple as that. If your deployment file is created correctly and if you have done the mapping correctly, the deployment in Kubernetes is pretty fast. Let me use the watch command to see if everything is deployed. Yep, it's running. I've given a 1 pod replica set is given 1, but as and when required, you can go and change it. There's a command available. We'll see in some time. 4 pods are running. 4 services are running. Dispatch as SVC is nothing, simply a cluster IP. This is again a cluster IP. This is a node port because I wanted to expose it publicly, and this is exposed on 32328. All right. Now let me find the IP, public IP of my node. I can pick any. Let me pick this one. And the port is 32328. something wrong. Yeah, it's working now. I think deployment was going internally. So now see, I've called my order service. Internally order service is calling, inventory, then payment, and then dispatch. I have consumed those services internally synchronously. There are multiple communication mechanisms available in the microservices. What you can use, you can use the queuing mechanism, you can use the asynchronous call, other asynchronous mechanism, right? I'll come up with a separate video for this microservices communication mechanism, but it's up to you how you want to consume services based on your business requirement. So if you want your calling service to wait till the time transaction is done, you need to call it synchronously, or you may call it asynchronously. You just push the command or push the outcome or execute the command and you are done with your execution. And behind the scene, the call is going to be completed asynchronously, right? Now let's use this mechanism to deploy some other type of service. So till now, whatever the example we have seen only Node.js. Now I'm going to deploy the .NET application. I'm not sure how many of you understand. So .NET is a Microsoft technology. Using C#, I have written a code, and people who are coming from Microsoft background will be able to relate it. So just to show you and help you understand, you can deploy a different kind of technology related services using the same mechanism. There's no difference at the Kubernetes level. All right. The only thing is that the Docker file may change. Yeah. First, I'll do the deployment, and then I'll walk you through the code as well. Now we'll see how to deploy .NET application. So before that, let me just double check if everything is deleted. Yep. So let me show you the code of your deployment unit. It's exactly same service model. I'm using the node port, exposing it on the port 8081, and deployment I have, rather than mentioning something from the container point of view, I have just mentioned the .NET application, which I have already published in my repository. So the name is .NET Core. This is the repository name. If you want to double check, let me go here, and there should be this one, right? So let's go and deploy it. Deployment is done. Pod is running, service is running. I have exposed that as a node port, so I need this 30280 to access it. Yeah, so this is a standard .NET Core application. If you will create any sample application, this will be created like this one, right? So you can use this application or sample application to deploy yourself if you want to. All right, now let's go and see some application, right? So let me show you. Yeah. So you have already seen Node.js application. There was an order application, simple Node.js application, which was internally calling multiple services, and those services are again plain vanilla Node.js. Now I'll walk you through quickly the .NET application and the Docker file, right, which I have used to go and get the Docker image build and then push it to repository. Application, and as I mentioned, right, you can find all these code in GitHub. I'll publish the URL in the description section, so from there you can use it, right? So API we have seen. So people who are coming from Microsoft background will be able to understand. There's a solution file created, there's a CS file, there's a startup file, there's a project file, and here I have created the Docker file as well. Let me show you the Docker file. So this is the standard, mechanism of Docker. We have seen it earlier as well. So I'm pulling a .NET Core libraries from Microsoft, that is maintained by Microsoft, from Docker Hub, and this is the working directory. I'm copying my code csproj file, and I'm running this command, and I'm exposing that to the port 8081. It's pretty simple and it's straightforward. So basically each application has its own way to writing the Docker file. You can find the samples easily available in their repository, or maybe in public repositories. So you can use any of the sample file and get your Docker file created. So it's again the simple code. I have published this image to the Docker hub, and then I'm using the same Kubernetes command to go and deploy it. So it can be a web application, it can be a API, depending on what application and how you are going to expose it. So in this case, if you have seen, this is the web application in fact, and in Node.js example, we have seen the APIs only. We were exposing API which was returning something, and on 8081 port .NET is publishing its web application. So Kubernetes is not just only for your APIs, even your web application can be deployed as a pod. So if you have created a multiple layer, your web application can go as a single service, separate service, exposed publicly, and which can only consume all the microservices depending on how you have built your architecture. Right? So this is all I wanted to cover in this section. So in the next video, I shall be covering some more advanced concepts like Kubernetes, dashboard creation, auto scalability, and stateful set. So don't miss my coming videos. To ensure you get notification, please subscribe and click on bell icon. Thank you so much for watching.